Hey everyone, I need to get something off my chest. It's a long story, and it's pretty heavy. I'm talking about my relationship with my dad and how it completely fell apart, ending in a way I never could have imagined. I guess I'm writing this partly for advice, but mostly just to finally say it all out loud to people who might understand. For most of my life, my dad was my hero. He built his business, a local hardware store, from the ground up. I have these vivid memories of being a little kid, sitting on the counter while he helped customers, his hands always a little dusty, his smile always so genuine. He'd let me organize the nuts and bolts, telling me I was his little partner. Our family wasn't rich, but we were comfortable and, more importantly, we felt like a team. Mom was happy, I was happy, and Dad seemed to be the happiest of all, proud of what he'd created for us. The store was like a second home, a place that smelled of sawdust and promise. I honestly believe that was the truth. The change didn't happen overnight. It was slow, like a leak you don't notice until you see the water stain on the ceiling. I was about 16. The business started doing really, really well. He landed a few big contracts for supplying materials to local construction crews. That should have been a good thing, right? But that's when he started to change. He began working later and later. Family dinners became a rare event. At first, he'd apologize, saying things like, "Just one more invoice, champ, then I'm all yours." But the "one more thing" turned into him not coming home until after I was asleep. Mom would keep his plate warm in the oven, but most nights, she just put it away, untouched. The worst part wasn't even his absence. It was how he acted when he was there. His mind was always at the store. You could be telling him about your day at school, and he'd just nod, his eyes distant, already thinking about inventory or profit margins. The little partner thing stopped. I wasn't on the counter anymore. I was just background noise. The weirdest part was how he acted in public versus at home. At church or a community event, he was still Charming Charlie, the self-made man who always had a minute to chat and a firm handshake. People loved him. They'd tell me how lucky I was to have such a great dad. And I'd just smile and nod because what was I supposed to say? Actually, at home, he stares right through me. It felt like we were all actors in a play he was directing. The successful businessman, the supportive wife, the proud son. The store's reputation was everything. Our actual family, our real feelings, didn't seem to matter as long as the public image was perfect. It was so confusing. I started to feel like I was going crazy, like maybe I was the problem for wanting my dad back. The first time it truly hurt was at my high school's career day. He'd promised for weeks he'd come speak about entrepreneurship. I was so excited to show him off, to have a piece of the old dad back. I saved him a seat right in the front row. The bell rang, and his seat was empty. I kept checking the door, making excuses to my teacher. He showed up as the last speaker was finishing, still in his work clothes. He didn't even look at me. He just walked up to the teacher, all smiles, and said, "So sorry, Margaret. A massive order came in that I simply had to handle myself. You know how it is." He gave his talk, and he was brilliant. Everyone was captivated. Afterward, as people crowded around him, I finally squeezed through and said, "Hey, Dad. You made it." He patted my shoulder without really looking at me and said to the person he was talking to, "This is my boy. Hopefully, he's got a better head for punctuality than for business." He laughed. They laughed. I just stood there, my face burning. He used my humiliation as a punchline. That was the moment the hero image I had of him didn't just crack, it shattered. In the car on the way home, I was quiet. I couldn't even look at him. He finally seemed to notice something was wrong. "What's with the long face?" he asked, his tone light, like he hadn't just publicly mocked me. I mumbled something about him being late. He sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "Son, you have to understand. That order was for the new community center. Do you know what that kind of client does for our reputation? My being there was more important than some school assembly." You'll understand when you're older. Business requires sacrifices. That word. Sacrifices. It became his mantra. Our time, our feelings, our plans, it was all just a sacrifice he had to make for the business. It never felt like a sacrifice for us. It felt like a sacrifice of us. And the worst part? He said it with this tone of weary importance, like he was a martyr for the family cause. The lies started small, too. He promised to help me fix my bike on Saturday, but then a critical meeting would come up. I'd find out later from Mom that the meeting was just him going over spreadsheets alone at the store. He wasn't even lying for a good reason. He was lying because it was easier than just saying he didn't want to spend time with me. Then came the bigger lies. He told my mom he was using the business loan to upgrade the store's security system. Mom found out he'd actually used it to buy a ridiculously expensive, brand new company truck with the store's logo plastered all over it. A rolling advertisement. When she confronted him, he didn't even flinch. He said, "The perception of success is success. The security system can wait." He was indifferent. The truth was just a tool, and if a lie worked better, he'd use it without a second thought. Our trust was less important than the store's image. The big confrontation happened right after I graduated. I'd decided to take a gap year and honestly, I was dreading it. I knew it meant a year of working for him, being constantly reminded I wasn't good enough. But I thought maybe, just maybe, we could reconnect. I was trying to be proactive. I'd spent a week researching new inventory software that could save him time and money. I laid it all out for him one night at the dinner table: charts, cost analysis, everything. He barely glanced at it. He just took a sip of his drink and said, "That's cute, but let the adults handle the business, okay? You can stick to stocking shelves." Something in me just snapped. All the years of being ignored, of being his punchline, came rushing out. I raised my voice. "Why do you always do this? Nothing I do is ever good enough for you. The business is all you care about." His reaction wasn't anger. It was worse. It was cold, dismissive calm. He set his glass down and looked at me like I was a misbehaving employee. "This attitude is exactly why you're not ready. This emotional outburst? Business isn't about feelings. It's about results. And you've never produced any." He walked out, leaving me sitting there, completely destroyed. That was the last time I tried to earn his respect. After that night I felt hollow. The anger was there, a hot coal in my chest, but it was buried under this immense sadness. It was like the dad I knew had died, and this cold, calculating stranger was living in his skin. I went through the motions at work, stocking those shelves, feeling his indifferent gaze on me. I'd see him charm a customer, and it made me sick. I'd hear him lie to Mom about where he was, and I'd just feel tired. The shock had worn off, and all that was left was this aching acceptance that my father chose a building full of tools over his own son. He didn't hate me. That would have required some kind of emotion. He was just completely indifferent. I was a piece of furniture in the story of his success. That hurts in a way that's really hard to describe. The acceptance wasn't peaceful. It was the quiet before the storm. That hot coal of anger never went out, it just got hotter, waiting for oxygen. The revenge fantasy wasn't about violence or anything like that. It was about speaking a language he understood. Business. He'd built his entire identity on being this shrewd, self-made businessman. He thought he was the smartest guy in the room. My plan was simple. I would learn his business better than he ever did. I would become the perfect, silent employee. I'd memorize every supplier, every price point, every client's name and preference. I'd learn exactly how the store worked, from the ground up. And I'd find the cracks. Every business has them. Every cut corner, every shaky deal, every little lie told to a supplier or client. I would learn all of his secrets. And then I would use them. For the next 8 months, I was a ghost. I showed up early, left late, and did every menial job he gave me without a word of complaint. I was polite, efficient, and invisible. He loved it. He thought his little talk had finally whipped me into shape. He'd even make comments to Mom about how I was finally learning what real work looks like. What he didn't see was me listening to every phone call, noting down every time he fudged numbers to a supplier or promised a client a discount he never intended to honor. I cataloged every instance of him using cheaper, off-brand materials but charging for the premium stuff. I became the store's silent historian, and the history was full of lies. I wasn't just stocking shelves, I was building a case. And he was handing me all the evidence. The opportunity came from an unexpected place. One of our biggest suppliers, a lumber company he'd been consistently late paying, was getting fed up. The owner, Mr. Gable, a gruff but fair man, came in person one afternoon to discuss the outstanding invoices. My dad, of course, was unavoidably detained. I was the one who had to face him. And instead of making excuses, I did something different. I was honest. I apologized for the delay. I listened to his frustrations. And then, I casually mentioned a few things. How my dad had just bought the new company truck. How he was talking about expanding. I framed it like I was just a naive kid proud of his dad's success, but I could see the gears turning in Mr. Gable's head. Why was he expanding if he couldn't pay his existing bills? It was a tiny seed of doubt. But it was the first one I'd planted. That small crack was all I needed. Over the next few weeks, I had quiet, respectful conversations with other frustrated vendors and even a few long-time customers who'd been given the runaround. I never accused my dad of anything directly. I'd just say things like, "Gosh, I'm so sorry about that. He told me he'd already taken care of it." Or, "That's strange, the invoice here says one thing, but he promised you another?" I was just a confused, helpful son, pointing out inconsistencies. But these were business people. They started connecting the dots themselves. The carefully crafted image of Charming Charlie, the trustworthy local businessman, began to look shaky. Whispers started. Credit terms with suppliers got tighter. The trust he'd spent decades building began to erode, and he had no idea why. He just thought he was having a string of bad luck. The final move was the biggest risk. The business was already on shaky ground because of the lost trust. But I needed to ensure it couldn't recover. I knew about a massive tax lien he was ignoring, hoping to quietly settle it later. He'd hidden the notices, even from my mom. I didn't do anything illegal. I simply made an anonymous, helpful tip to the local business bureau, suggesting they might want to formally resend all correspondence regarding his business license to ensure it was received, as there were rumors of financial difficulties. The lien became very public knowledge very quickly. His credit lines were immediately frozen. Suppliers demanded cash on delivery. The house of cards he'd built, where image was everything and truth was optional, came crashing down. He was finished. He never found out it was me. He blamed the economy, bad luck, unfair competitors. He sat at our kitchen table, a broken man, ranting about how the world was out to get him. He couldn't see that the person who destroyed his business was the one who knew it best, and who he had taught to value winning above everything else, even family. Watching the store close wasn't a triumphant moment. It was sad. It was the death of my childhood dream and the final proof that my father was not the man I thought he was. There was no satisfaction, just a heavy, quiet emptiness. The revenge was complete, but it didn't fill the hole he'd left. It just made the hole a permanent part of the landscape. So, what did I learn from all this? I learned that indifference can be more damaging than hate. I learned that some people care more about the symbol of something, a successful business, a perfect family image, than the real thing. My advice to anyone in a similar situation? Don't try to beat them at their own game. It leaves you empty. Your energy is better spent building your own life, one based on real things like honesty and genuine connection. I'm in therapy now, working through all of this, and I'm starting my own small business. This time, it's going to be built on a real foundation, not just a pretty facade. The best revenge isn't destruction, it's building something better than they ever could. Thank you for listening.